What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be taking our first deep look at the spread mechanic in Battlefield 6, also known in the community as bloom or dispersion. Essentially the mechanic that exists in the game where your shots don't go to your point of aim. There will be a random amount of spread even when aiming down sight, and this spread value is affected by many factors that we'll be getting into today. Now initially I was going to hold off on this video because I anticipate we're going to be seeing some changes to spread, since it is one of the bigger complaints in the community right now, at least the amount of spread that we're seeing in the launch build of the game compared to the beta. It seems many feel that they've overtuned that, and also there's a couple issues with it where it doesn't appear to be working as it should be working, and I will be covering those later on in the video. So this video is mainly just going to be an introduction, since I had so many people requesting this after covering recoil, which you covered in yesterday's video. When it comes to spread, this is separate from recoil, and as I said, it's that randomness you'll see with your shots while aiming down sight, where your bullets just aren't going to where your reticle is pointed. And the way this works on the back end, assuming they haven't made any major changes to how they handle spread compared to previous Battlefield games, when you start firing a gun and you start holding down the trigger, your spread value will start either very low or all the way down to 0, so there's no spread at all. And with every shot that's fired while holding down the trigger, that spread value will increase. Now, at the same time, there is a steady decay to the amount of spread that you're experiencing that's happening all the time. This is applied constantly, so you don't have to stop firing and then it will recenter. Even between shots when firing full auto, there is some spread decay that's trying to take place. However, when firing full auto, the spread increase per shot is going to outpace the spread decay between shots, so it will still be increasing over time as you continue to hold the trigger down. Until it reaches its maximum value, it will cap out, and that value is dependent on the gun, as well as some of the attachments that you can use on your gun. And it's also dependent on factors like what you're doing in that moment, because any sort of movement with your character will increase the amount of spread that you experience, as well as the maximum spread value that you can experience. So you'll see that kick in much faster, and it will be a much higher degree of spread. Same thing with jumping or shortly after landing from a jump. This will increase your spread values quite a bit. So one of the keys to managing spread is ensuring that you're not moving around like crazy. You generally want to plant your feet, but you can take it even farther than that. If you crouch, you will see a spread reduction. Typically this is 10% in Battlefield. It's likely somewhere in that ballpark for Battlefield 6 as well. This is something that's very hard to hand test, and therefore we'll have to rely on some data mine stats that will likely come down the road. So I do plan on revisiting this topic once we get those values, but you do see a slight reduction to spread when crouching, and you see a further reduction to your spread when prone. So if you really want to minimize that spread in the given situation, make sure you're prone and not moving at all. Additionally, to ensure that your spread doesn't get out of control, this is where tap firing comes in, especially if you're stretching out your ranges at all. You definitely want to be tap firing. You don't want to just hold the trigger down because, like I covered earlier, the longer you're firing for, the more your spread is going to increase over time. However, when you tap fire or fire in short bursts, that little delay that you're taking between those bursts allows that spread to decay and not get out of control on you. And therefore, this is what you want to do if you're stretching out the ranges at all. And one big key I want to point out here is, unlike recoil, where there's a difference in the amount of recoil you experience depending on the input you're using, controller or mouse and keyboard, when it comes to spread, as far as I can tell with my testing, this is consistent across inputs. So you don't get reduced spread if you're using a controller, just reduced recoil. Now, in practical terms, one of the most important things to know about spread is it does appear to be tied to your precision stat when looking at the stat bar for a gun. So the higher that precision value, the lower the spread you're going to experience. And you really see the difference here with the AK-205, for instance. This one has quite a high precision value at 76 by default, whereas the M4 in the same category has a precision value of just 25, and you can really see the difference there in the amount of spread that you're experiencing. Not only how quickly that spread ramps up, but also the maximum amount of spread that you're going to experience when continuing to hold down the trigger. Additionally, a common complaint I've been seeing is that many SMGs actually have better spread values than some of the assault rifles or carbines. So just as a third example here, we've got the MP5, or the PW5A3 as they call it in game. This has a precision value of 39, and you can see there's a lot less spread here compared to the M4, but it's still not as accurate as the AK-205 is. Now with that precision value, you might notice that certain attachments will improve your precision, one of which is the heavy barrel, which isn't available on every gun, but it's available on the AK-205. And just looking at the maximum spread value, you can see there is a slight difference there when using the heavy barrel compared to the basic barrel on this gun. On top of that, with some of the muzzle attachments, they will state that they increase your precision value, like the converter, for instance, will increase this the most out of the muzzle attachments. And that's something I didn't pick up on when making my recoil video. I was just mainly looking at the descriptions, and there was nothing in the description stating that it improved your accuracy, which is typically what's stated in the descriptions if it's having an impact on your spread. However, looking back to those recoil plots, you can actually see with these breaks that the spread seems to kick in a little bit slower. It doesn't start spreading as much with those initial shots fired, especially with like the single port break, for instance. And it also appears that the maximum amount of spread toward the top end of the recoil plots, it is a little bit smaller on some of these muzzle attachments compared to the base. So they do appear to help your spread values a little bit. And then another thing I wanted to point out attachment-wise is there are some attachments that only affect your spread while moving. Like with some of the underbarrel grips, for instance, it'll say that improved recoil comes at the cost of aim down sight accuracy while moving. Whereas on the flip side of that, there are some attachments that improve your aim down sight accuracy when moving, like the light barrel, for instance, that will improve that, as well as the blue laser attachments. These also have that same stat attached to them. So you do have the potential to somewhat improve your spread while moving, but at the end of the day, you're still going to be better off just planting your feet when firing at long ranges. Also, one last quick tip here, and another method of significantly reducing the spread that you experience is to swap your gun into semi-auto mode, and this will naturally keep your spread very, very low, but it will of course significantly limit your rate of fire and therefore your time to kill potential. And that's going to cover it for all of the basics I wanted to talk about when it comes to spread and how it interacts with the various attachments in this game. Again, that's something I plan on diving deeper into down the road. Next, let's talk about the issues or perceived issues with the current state of spread in Battlefield 6. The first thing I want to point out is the big bloom bug that I shared during the beta of the game. That has actually been fixed, and this was confirmed by a developer. This is the one where after certain types of slides, if they were interrupted in a certain way, it would lock your spread value to the maximum even when you weren't firing at all. So literally every shot you fired, including the first one, and even if you tap fired, it would be totally inaccurate until you slid again, and that would reset this. That bug has been taken care of. However, the devs said they are tracking 2 issues that affect dispersion, bloom, aim down sight spread in an unintended way. And while he didn't go into specifics as to what these are, according to them, there are a couple issues that I found, and these might be related to the issues that are going to be fixed soon. And these may actually be the exact same issue, just packaged in different forms. The first one is it seems the decay rate when you stop moving, especially if you were sprinting and then you suddenly stop moving and you start firing, even though you've planted your feet as you should be, that spread doesn't seem to be decaying fast enough to get you perfectly accurate, as you should be since you planted your feet and you're no longer moving. So you're doing the right things that should allow you to be accurate, but you're not accurate even with the first shot that you fire after performing that action. And the second issue appears to be a very similar thing, but instead of with movement, this just has to do with aiming down sight. If you fire your first shot either just barely before you get fully aimed down sight, even though you can already see your reticle, but you're not fully aimed down sight, or sometimes even like a couple frames after you're fully aimed down sight, it seems that transition from your hipfire spread to your aim down sight spread gets interrupted by that shot, and you end up with that maximum spread value from the moment you pull the trigger. Again, with your first shot fired, and then every shot after that, you're already at that maximum spread value. And that feels really wrong as well. The way it should work, at least in my eyes when it comes to that, is as you're aiming down sight, your hipfire spread should be tightening up until it goes all the way down to 0 when you get fully aimed down sight. And it should always end up at 0 before starting to spread out from there again. Even if you start firing as you're in that transition between hipfire and aim down sight, it should still be tightening up to the point where it goes to 0 and then spreading out from there. And that's not happening. It's simply getting interrupted and you're immediately at that maximum spread value. And that can feel really bad as well. It makes it feel like you have to make sure you pause after aiming down sight before you pull the trigger. And that feels awful when you're in a gunfight. It feels like you're fighting this system far more than you should be. I get why they have spread in a Battlefield game. It prevents people from just laser beaming people across the map. It allows you to actually cross open spaces fairly comfortably when enemies are at a distance. And having no spread at all would probably be quite bad for the game. In saying that, I'm personally against high levels of spread, and I do think they've taken it too far for launch. Because I'm often finding, even in like mid-range gunfights, I'm not talking about really long ranges where I'm trying to beam somebody across the map. I'm just talking like mid-range, very reasonable distance where it feels like I should be within the effective range of a carbine or an assault rifle, for instance. I still find myself having to be very careful about my spread value. I still find myself having to plant my feet and tap fire in ranges where it really doesn't feel like you should have to do that to comfortably hit your shots. I just feel in situations like those randomness shouldn't be the deciding factor in how that gunfight goes. It should be more about who gets their shots on first, who is controlling their recoil more effectively, and keeping their point of aim on their target. But as it is right now, recoil is tuned so low that it's extremely easy to control. It's barely even a factor in the gunfight, whereas spread is tuned very high and it becomes a huge factor in the gunfight. And as a result, I just find there are too many situations when you're playing to the intended strengths of your gun, in the intended ranges of your gun, and yet those gunfights still feel like they're coming down to a coin flip rather than your actual skill in that situation. Now, of course, that's just my opinion on the current state of aim down sight spread. I personally would love to see them reduce that, even all the way back to beta levels, but then maybe increase recoil a little bit. Or perhaps increase weapon sway more so when you're strafing, so you can see that better communicated to the player as to why their shots are missing, because their actual reticle will be moving around, rather than bullets coming out of the side of their barrel at unnatural angles. Now, of course, those are just my opinions, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this whole situation in those comments down below. Do you agree that spread has gotten a little out of hand in the game's current state and it is too high? Do you think it's totally fine as is, or maybe are you on the other side? Do you think bloom should just not exist at all in a Battlefield game? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.